Now, so far, most of the objects we've been messing with on Tweens have been set up properly, and that means they're a movie clip and they're in a layer by themselves. Earlier, we saw what happens if we take an object that's not in a layer by itself. By adding a motion preset or creating a tween, Flash will create a layer for you and move that item to the new layer. Now, let's look at what happens when we have something that's not a movie clip. I'm just going to switch back to my normal selection tool here. And I'm going to hide my photo montage layer so that we can see the content panel underneath. And I'm going to go ahead and unlock that content panel. And when we click on it, we can see that the content panel is just a shape. Now let's see what happens when we try to add a motion tween to it just like this. I'll go up to the Insert menu. We'll choose Motion Tween. And it's going to alert me the first time you do this. It says that the item must be a symbol, and it's actually going to create the symbol for me. I'm just going to click OK here, and you can see that that's been turned into a symbol. Now that's great, but you'll notice that the name of the symbol it created was symbol 1, because the program doesn't know what you would have normally named the symbol. Now that's fine, and you could leave it like that, but I generally like to keep things neat in my program, so I'm going to go over to my Library menu, and let me just extend this down a little bit so we can see a few more of our items. There's our symbol 1, and I can just double-click on the name right here to rename it. You can do that anytime you want to in your movie file, but I think it's better to know what these things are instead of having symbol 27 sitting there in your library. So I'm just going to call this Content Panel. Let me click out of my Library panel, and when I click back onto my Content Panel, you can see that the name is reflected right here in the Properties. Now there are a couple of other things that we can see with that motion tween that we just created. If I move my timeline over, you can see that that new motion tween extends all the way to the end of the document because that's the frame span that we had originally sitting there. Now, I don't really want my motion tween to be that long, so I'm just going to drag and shorten it up. And maybe we'll bring it down to about 25 frames or so, somewhere around there. I also want it to start a little bit after some of the other elements. So I'm going to set the start position by, once again, grabbing the span and just moving it over. We'll have it start moving after the first few buttons start coming in. Now you should also notice that once again we've created a blank tween. I don't see any keyframe at the end of this, which means no motion. I've got my panel sitting in the position that I want it to end at, and I'd actually like to fly it in from the right-hand side of the screen. Now in order to save that ending position, what I'm going to do is click down here at the end. That moves my playhead right to the end of the span, and I'm going to right-click in order to insert a keyframe for the position. That'll hold my ending position, and now if I go back to the beginning of my animation, I can change the start position by just dragging my panel off the screen. Now we've got a nice fly-in for our panel. Now we've only got one more issue to deal with, and that is our panel's going to disappear, just like before, because we don't have another span here. So let's fix that up. I'm going to press F7 to create a blank keyframe right after my tween span ends. I'm going to back my playhead up, and I've selected the last frame of my content panel, which I'm going to copy, Command-C or Control-C. And I'm going to go to my new keyframe. I'll use Edit this time so we can see that we're going to paste in place, so we put it right back where it was before. And then we can move our timeline down here a little bit. I want to extend that span out to the end, so I'll just select the last keyframe for my animation and press F5.